To all who come to this happy podcast, welcome. Welcome to This Happy Place, a Disney podcast. And on this episode, we are continuing our series of talking about every film to come from the Walt Disney Animation Studio. We are on the 11th film, which means it's already time to talk about The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr.Toad. Not only are we going to be talking about The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr.Toad, but this is the last film in the packaged film era. We have done it. I'm not going to lie, some of these packaged films were kind of rough to get through. Some of them were not very good in my opinion. One of them, Make Mine Music, being my least favorite movie we have watched so far. But this is the last one in the packaged film era. And after this, we have Cinderella. Then there's just an incredible streak of straight up awesome movies. But let's go ahead and talk about The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr.Toad. This movie came out in 1948, but the origins of this movie can be traced back all the way to April of 1938, nearly a decade prior. This was several months after Snow White came out, and it was doing really well for the studio. Roy, Walt's brother, who was also the finance person for the company, traveled to Europe to do some deal making for foreign distribution of Snow White. But on that trip, another mission of his was to acquire the rights for several other projects that Walt Disney saw promise in. One of those projects was the book The Wind in the Willows. The Wind in the Willows is the book where the character Mr. Toad comes from. And a common theme, as you have probably been able to tell with some of these packaged films, were that they were originally planned to be full-length feature films. The Wind in the Willows is no exception, with story work beginning as early as 1940. The animation for this movie started in 1941, as several animators were getting done with their work on Bambi. In May of 1941, the animators at Disney went on strike and production halted for pretty much everything Disney was working on. By October, after the strike, and the effects of the strike had settled down, production for The Wind in the Willows started back up again. If everything went perfectly for Walt Disney Studios, we would be living in a world where it is very likely that Wind in the Willows would have been the sixth film to come from Walt Disney Animation. And obviously, as we all know, it didn't go perfectly for the studio. Around that same time, when production started to gear up again, a banker by the name of Joseph Rosenberg summoned Roy and another Disney executive to the Bank of America's headquarters in San Francisco. At this meeting, Rosenberg gave Disney an ultimatum. The ultimatum originated with the fact that Disney had just lost a lot of money with the expensive productions of Fantasia and Pinocchio, but the bank would give Disney more money, but there were some requirements that Disney had to follow. Disney could only work on animated shorts and feature-length films that were already in production until they had earned back the money. So those films that were already in production were Dumbo, Bambi, and Wind in the Willows. Shortly after this, no doubt a result of being a little bummed out with this new ultimatum from the bank, Walt officially put production of Wind in the Willows on hold. He shelved it, saying that it wasn't good enough to do well enough on the market. It was January 1942 when it was officially put on hold for the foreseeable future. Then we have to fast forward all the way back to October 1943 when production slowly picked up again. It was around this time when Walt decided to abandon the feature film idea and rework it into a short to be combined with another movie that was also reworked into a short, The Legend of Happy Valley, which was also Mickey and the Beanstalk. This short was, of course, worked into Fun and Fancy Free instead, and then from 1944 to 1947, The Wind in the Willows project was put on hold and started again numerous times. It was only until 1947, when Disney started working on The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, that they decided to combine Wind and the Willows and Sleepy Hollow into a film called Two Fabulous Characters, which was later retitled to be The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr.Toad. The New York Times said of this film that Mr. Disney has fashioned a conclave of cartoons, creatures, which by and large have the winsome qualities and charm of such creations as Mickey Mouse. Variety magazine said it ranks among the best full-length cartoons turned out by Walt Disney Studios, while Life magazine said It leaves out the poetry and most of the subtlety, but it still has enough action for the children and wit enough for everybody to enjoy. If we try to talk about the legacy of this film, it is one that is actually surprisingly present today. In Disneyland Paris, you can eat a classic English meal of fish and chips at Toad Hall. Disneyland USA has a Mr. Toad ride and a little nod to the movie on the Storybook Land Canal boats. The Headless Horseman has a statue at California Adventure during the Halloween season, and the Headless Horseman precedes the Halloween parade at the Magic Kingdom. What do people like about this film that have caused it to have this type of surprisingly good legacy? I honestly don't think too many people have seen this movie. There are some engineering things that would make it difficult to take out the ride in Disneyland. Plus, what would they replace it with? The space is too small for them to add something new, especially on the scale in which they've created rides today. But it's a charming ride that was there when Disneyland opened, and I feel like it's right on the edge of being just curious enough for people to want to go back and ride it. And people like spooky things, and the Horseman is definitely spooky. Despite being named second in the movie's title, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad comes first. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at Disneyland has always been one of my favorite rides. It perfectly fits into my sense of humor, random, odd, and seemingly when nothing makes sense. That was my view of the ride for a very long time. I went on the ride dozens of times before I ever even saw the movie, and when I watched the movie for the first time, I was excited to get more context about the ride. Because, let's be honest, it's kind of difficult to get an idea about what the story of the ride is. The thing I was most curious about is, what does the underworld have to do with anything? Well, to my surprise, the movie has nothing to do with the underworld, but I will talk about that more in just a second. The adjective that describes the ride at Disneyland is wild, and that certainly fits the movie as well. This movie has a gag a minute and almost feels like an extended Mickey Mouse, or more accurately, Donald Duck cartoon. That makes me happy that it's only a portion of the movie as opposed to a full-length feature film. I feel like the shtick of how wild Mr. Toad is would get old very fast, and I don't think it would carry an entire movie. An example of something similar to this is Mater in Cars 2. Mater is a beloved character in the first Cars movie. I mean, how can you not like Mater? Because he had such a good positive response to him, he was the main character in Cars 2, and we all know how that turned out. Mater being Mater is a great joke, but not great for fueling an entire movie. But for the 30-ish minutes or so you're watching Mr. Toad, they use every second very purposefully. This short is very fast-paced. You have absolutely no time to think, which may be for the better. Does it have a heart-gripping story or an emotional event that helps you relate to the characters? It doesn't, and I think that's actually a good thing. Part of the charm that comes with this is the complete insanity of Mr. Toad, a character that, while oblivious at times, is just loving his best life, completely ignorant of the kind of things that result from his actions. When I say he is insane, I mean it 100%. He has no brakes, not only when he drives his car or buggy pulled by a horse, but he doesn't have any brakes when it comes to toning down his personality or his energy levels, and there's something charming about that. You are watching this and you are thinking, if I knew this Toad in real life, I'd want to kick him, but in the movie, you are strangely rooting for him in a weird way. It's a really weird relationship you have with him, but Mr. Toad doesn't annoy you. He draws you in with all the extreme elements of his personality, and he doesn't let you go. Mr. Toad is definitely on my list of favorite Disney characters, and there isn't another Disney character like him. One of my favorite moments in this film is the courtroom scene. Yes, Mr. Toad does have a little bit of a courtroom drama to it. The events that led here are hilarious. Mr. Toad is a thrill seeker, and he comes across this car in which he trades the deed to his house to acquire. Little does he know that the car he got in the trade was stolen, and Mr. Toad goes to jail. This whole segment of Mr. Toad in the classical courtroom wig, being his own defense, is comedic gold. I don't remember if I have audibly chucked in a Disney movie up to this point. I have thought that moments are funny, but it hasn't been until this movie where I have been audible with my chuckles. For the first time since, I don't actually know when, but probably Bambi, you can tell that the people working on this film were having fun again. The other packaged films up to this point definitely felt more like obligations of something that needed to be done, but this felt like it was something that wanted to be done. The energy was there from beginning to end, never a dull moment, and never a moment that was too overwhelming. The climax of this movie takes place in Toad Hall, with Toad and his three friends trying to reclaim the manor. The manor has been taken over by a gang of weasels led by a bartender named Winky. This is actually quite the action-packed scene. Toad and his friends sneak into the manor to try and take back the deed so they can use it to prove Toad's innocence. It's high stakes, it's funny, and extremely entertaining. My favorite part of this scene is when they turn the deed into a paper airplane and they throw it to each other. At one point, the paper airplane flies into, then back out of the fireplace, under a rug, back and forth between the heroes and the weasels. But then Mr. Toad takes a bunch of other paper, throws it over a balcony to make it hard for the weasels to see which paper is the one they are after, and the three escaped. Toad becomes innocent, and the short ends with Toad being exonerated and the manor being his. Except instead of a car being his new obsession, he finds a plane, and in typical Mr. Toad fashion, Thaddeus Toad, he causes a lot of collateral damage with his plane. I loved this portion of The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Mr. Toad is definitely on my ongoing list of favorite Disney characters, and I can see myself revisiting this short whenever I need a little pick-me-up. The Ichabod Sleepy Hollow portion of this short is, and I'm not going to lie, really disappointing. I have never read the story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, so I admit this might be my fault for setting expectations, but I was expecting a more spooky story. The horror, which is not really horror at all, is just a little spooky portion, is really only the last 15 minutes. The other 20 or so minutes is just a very rudimentary story about two people in a town trying to win the appreciation of the same girl. I remember wanting to put this movie on my list of Halloween movies I watch every year, but I will not be doing that because, like I said, it's not a scary movie, and I was kind of disappointed with the route that they took. One of my biggest pet peeves is the portion that when characters don't talk at all, and it's rather all done by narration. I just feel that for this story, that is an incredibly lazy way to tell the story. I want to get to know these characters by their actions and not necessarily be told about them, which is what happens when it's exclusively done by narration. But like I just said, it's not a very entertaining movie at all. I don't see a single reason as to why you should watch the first 20 or so minutes of this short. There is nothing noteworthy or anything worth mentioning. Boring is a great way to put it. With that being said, the last 10 minutes or so are actually quite brilliant. Ichabod is an extremely superstitious person, and when the antagonist notices this at a Halloween party, he takes advantage of it. He gathers everyone around and performs a musical number targeted towards Mr. Ichabod Crane, telling a story about how the Headless Horseman, who just so happens to stalk the exact route that Ichabod needs to take to get home, he does this through song, and this song is actually really good and catchy. It's upbeat, which almost seems like the wrong tempo for a song that's meant to scare you, but there's something about it that does send shivers down your spine. It's almost written in a way that makes it feel mysterious, and yet in a way that you already kind of know what to expect from the song. I don't really know how to explain it. It just keeps you on your toes. But I think a bigger portion of the credit needs to be given to Bing Crosby, who, apart from being the narrator for it, does the singing for this song. And of course, it is perfection. I think there's a great chance that if anyone else tried to sing the song, it wouldn't have landed the way that it did. The last 5 minutes of the short are Ichabod going home with the constant threat of the Headless Horseman chasing him. This actually does a great job at building tension. It subverts your expectations in multiple ways. For example, when Ichabod is in the forest, Ichabod runs into a tree that seemingly has eyes, but it's rather two fireflies in a rotted out hole of a tree. Another example is in the graveyard. Ichabod's horse is stuck, and he hears horse steps coming from it and fears it's the horseman. But in reality, it's just some cattail plants hitting a log in a repeated rhythm. But then the horseman does show up, and I absolutely love the design and everything doing with its animation. We first see in front of the moon the horse on its hind legs, and in a brief moment the sky turns an almost red color, creating an outline of the horseman. It's beautifully done, and that basically carries throughout the rest of the short. I love the way the cape is animated. It's almost like it's frozen in time, and it moves slower than the horseman is. I'm doing a terrible job at explaining this, but the way it looks only adds to the mystery of the horseman. The short concluded with an ambiguous ending, hinting that maybe Ichabod did survive, but maybe he didn't. Overall, like a lot of these packaged films, I absolutely loved about half of it, but I didn't like half of it. On my rankings, I'll probably have to put this at number 6, just because I do feel like the Mr. Toad portion did carry it. Like most of the packaged films, I only like half of the movie, like I just said. But there is only one short I didn't like, talking about like packaged films. The benefit that The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad has going for it is that it is only 2 shorts. There is only one short I didn't like compared to others when there is several. In its 6th spot, it's right behind Melody Time at 5 and in front of The Three Caballeros at 7. Well, thank you to listening to this episode of This Happy Place, a Disney podcast. And remember, there is a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day.